Morning fam, you know what time it is. Get your drink and pull up. We are about to talk about food preservation and preserving food. Now, if you're new to the channel, welcome. I hope you enjoy yourself. Welcome back to all the normal folks. So glad you returned. I did miss you. Now let's get into it. So today's video, I'm just going to talk about, one of the most important things that preppers do, or that you'll do as a prepper, or just somebody who's getting better at preparing, is your food storage and preserving food. The whole idea is to be able to take said food and make it last the longest that you can possibly make it last, okay? And yes, there are certain foods that do, for the most part, if you store them correctly, will last forever. They're forever foods, okay? Now, I get a lot of side questions on preserving food and, hey, can I do this? I mean, I get emails and little DMs all the time of basic questions that have to do with preserving food, okay? So although overall the group doesn't really like my food preservation videos, right? You guys don't really like them. You don't really view them. However, I do get a lot of side questions about preserving food. So today we're going to get into that. Okay. So I'm going to go over the top mistakes that preppers make, or that everyday people make when it comes to preserving food. Okay. Cause you can mess this up, you guys. There's several ways that you can preserve food. What I'm talking about is, bulk food, Mylar bags, vacuum sealing, dehydrating food, canning food, pressure canning, water bathing, vacuum sealing jars. Like, I'm talking about all of that. Okay. So I'm not going to talk about a certain process or a certain system, if you will, but I'm going to just talk about general mistakes when you start preserving food. Okay. And just take notes, because some of this stuff, you just might not be thinking about. Okay. So you don't want to miss this. So let's get into it. All right. So mistakes that we make when preserving food. We don't research. So what I learned very, very early is you have got to do your research. You can't just take something and be like, oh, I'm going to do that, because there's certain processes that are, they have to be done a very certain way, in order. And if you don't follow that, you run the risk of actually hurting your family, right? You run the risk of people getting very, very sick or possibly dying if you don't do some of these processes correctly. And it is why some people shy away from some of the processes, like pressure canning meat. A lot of people don't do that because, they've heard all these stories about salmonella and all this stuff. And that's a very valid fear. I mean, that's a very valid, like, hey, that absolutely could happen. But if you're following everything that you're supposed to do, all the steps, you're going to be fine. Okay. And then there's checks and balances even after it's on the shelf to make sure stuff's still good. Okay. So you got to do your research. If you want to get into canning, you need to do your research. You need to read articles. You need to read books. You need to watch channels, watch the experts, watch people who have been doing it for, for years and years and years, and figure out what is correct. There's certain websites you can go to make sure that it's something that is even recommended to do. Okay. And then you have to make the decision if you're going to move forward and do it. All right. Next one is use oxygen absorbers. So you have folks that know about oxygen absorbers, know that you can use them to further your food, right? It will help once you seal a bag, seal a Mylar, it will help take out the remaining air, and it's very good. We do it in jars when we're vacuum sealing, all types of stuff. However, you've got to know what foods can have oxygen absorbers. There are certain foods that they either won't work on, right? You won't use them because they won't work, or foods that absolutely you're not supposed to use an oxygen absorber because they could explode. Okay. So you just need to, when you start doing anything with Mylar, or you start watching people, again, you're doing research to figure out, hey, what is the right way to store this food? And does it require an oxygen absorber? Don't just be throwing those in any kind of food, just thinking, oh, it's fine. For the most part, you're going to be good, but there's just some foods that you're definitely not going to put that with that said food. An example would be like your baking powder or baking sodas. You're not going to be putting oxygen absorbers in that. If it's a food that's not fully going to dry out, like it's going to go bad because the way you're storing it, You throwing in an oxygen absorber is not going to help that food. It's not going to help that process. Okay. So again, going back to number one, do your research. Okay, next one is storing the wrong foods. So again, I talked a few minutes ago about forever foods. There are foods that if you store them right, they will last forever. So an example of a forever food is white rice. White rice, if you store it properly, will last forever, you guys. Forever. Unless it gets infected with with bugs and stuff like that, it will last forever if you keep it right, okay? Meaning you keep it dry and it's cool and it doesn't get any bugs in it. It will last forever, okay? Now, once moisture gets to it and all that stuff, can it go bad? Yes, but if you store it right, it has the potential to last forever. An example of a food that won't last forever, though, is brown rice, okay? So something you would not do is you would not store bulk, buckets and buckets and buckets of brown rice, because it is going to go bad. It's going to go rancid, no matter how you store it, no matter what you do eventually. Okay. And there's just certain foods that they're like that. They're not going to last. Okay. So you just need to, know that and store the proper foods for long-term storage. Now stuff like, I don't want you to take that as gospel. Okay. So you could store and get some brown rice on your shelves, but you just really need to know the lifespan of that, so that you can have that in a normal rotation, okay? You wouldn't be able to store that for, say, put in a bucket for 20, 25 years, but you could get it in your shelf and on your shelf for the next couple years. Yes, so you can have it. It's just different, okay? All right, I think I did that one. Okay, so don't follow the processes. So again, I talked about salmonella. Canning, pressure canning, for example, has very specific steps with your canner, what to do, what to wait for. There's a lot of times, okay? And all the other processes are the same. You are going to follow the processes of what it says, and do that, okay? If you do that, you'll be safe, you guys. You'll be okay. Next one is water bathing instead of pressure canning. So I get questions all the time, certain foods have to be pressure canned, you guys. You can't water bathe a can of raw meat. It's just not going to work. First of all, the process is completely different. The food will not be cooked. You will get salmonella. It's just it's not good at all. So you have got to understand your processes and what foods are meant for which processes, okay? So understand what can be water bathed, and then the foods that need to be pressure canned, okay? And if you do any kind of research, start reading any kind of books, you'll clearly start to see the pattern of, okay, what's supposed to be pressure canned and what's supposed to be water bathed. All right, they don't store it properly. So this is, you buy bulk food, right? Either you buy bulk food and you just put that bulk food in the bulk bag right on the shelf or right in the garage, right? You don't store it properly. That needs to be broken down and it needs to be contained, meaning you need to either dry can it, vacuum sealing it in bags, in jars, or putting it in Mylar bags and putting that, you can't just buy stuff in bulk, you guys, and just put it on the shelf. Another thing is, a lot of people buy everyday foods. Like some examples would be cereal and boxes of cereal, boxes of macaroni and cheese, boxes of crackers and chips and things like that. And they're like, oh, I got a bunch of them, and they put them up. They're not going to last, you guys. Those types of food are stale within the week, okay? So if they're not ate right away, they're going to go bad. And now you have this cabinet full of cereal and crackers and chips, and now they're all stale. Girl, none of that stuff is good right now. You've got to vacuum seal it. You've got to get it put away the right way. Otherwise, it just goes bad. It goes stale, and then it's no good, okay? Next one is using Mylar bags alone. So a lot of people know, oh, okay, I'm going to store this food. I'm going to put it in a Mylar bag. Okay, it needs an oxygen absorber. Okay, I'm going to do that. They seal it. They do all that great work, right? But then they just put it on a shelf somewhere, okay? You've got to do the second step by putting that Mylar bag that you just put this beautiful food in into something else, okay? It doesn't have to be 5-gallon buckets. That could be any kind of plastic container. People choose the 5-gallon buckets just because of the ease of, it seals really good. It's thick. A lot of them are for food, BPA. They're for food. So it just makes sense. They stack well. But you don't necessarily have to do that. Let's just say you did a bunch of rice. You could put all of that in a normal tote, a container, a normal plastic container, and put that somewhere. Put it in a nice, dark, cool place, okay? And that would be just fine. Because the idea is 2 barriers, and the idea is to keep the, rodents out of it, okay? If you just leave the Mylar bags open, they can chew through the Mylar bag, and it's not good on its own, okay? Another mistake is watching a YouTube channel like this one, you guys, and just taking them as gospel, okay? Never just watch 1 or 2 channels and be like, boom, got it, and go. You need to do the research behind it to see what they're saying. When I started canning, I wanted to can bacon and butter. I still am, you guys, but I realized after doing my own research is I saw 1,000 channels doing it, and 1,000 channels saying, hey, it's fine. We've been doing it for, decades. But when I did research, I quickly realized it's not a recommended method to do for canning, which is butter and bacon. And I was like, man, those are my 2 favorite things. It's one of the 2 things that was on the top of the list to do, okay? So you'll do research, you'll figure out, okay? And then you'll make the decision. Another thing is dry canning in jars in the oven. So it's not recommended. Some people hate it. Some people swear that it's good. So again, you're going to make your own decision from your own research, okay? Not necessarily just following some channel and be like, well, she said I could do this, so I'm going to do it. No, crazy. You're a full adult. You're a full human being with your own mind and your own capacity to think for yourself. And so please do that, okay? All right, just a few more, you guys. So preserving food that you don't eat. So this is a simple one. Don't be buying bulk bags of food to preserve, and it's food that you guys don't even eat. Like your family hasn't ate rice a day in your life and you don't really care for it, and you've got 100 pounds of rice put away. For what? Why do you have all that rice if you guys can't stand rice? You don't have to just buy these prepping foods. Like if a prepper says rice and beans, no, we say that because it's a good bulking option. It's a good thing. It's a good food that will can be stretched for a very long time. It's filling. You don't need a whole lot of it. If you got down to not very much, right, you could ration it. There's a lot of reasons why we say rice and beans, right? But by all means, don't go getting rice and beans if your family doesn't eat rice and beans. You need to preserve the food that your family eats. Buy what you guys eat, or you're going to be upset. Second to last one, you guys, I'm almost done. So preserving in bulk. I kind of already touched that on another one. That's just getting your food and throwing on the shelf. But also I'm talking about a lot of channels, and even I have a video on this. I was preserving some beans and rice, okay? That's about the only thing that I preserve in a big bulk faction in Mylar bags and in 5-gallon buckets, okay? Outside of that, you're typically going to want to get Mylar, get your buckets, get your Mylar bags, whatever you're going to do, but get smaller ones. Get 1 pound. They have 1 pound bags, 2 pound bags, 5 pound bags. Get the smaller bags and break down that bulk food into the smaller bags, because it only makes sense when you crack that bucket. If it's bulk, all of that starts going, potentially going bad the minute you open it, right? Its lifespan starts, clicking away. But if you have, smaller bags that you can grab out of it, and then you just open that smaller bag, that's what people mean by bulk, storing in bulk. Now, some stuff, hey, it's gonna be bulk. Like I said, we do our rice and beans for the most part in bulk, and then everything else we kind of break down in smaller bags. But we also keep it at 150 different ways of preserving rice and beans, okay? All right, and then the last one I have is failing to do inventory and rotate your food. So, and this is super common. I mentioned this in another video. I'm horrible at this, but you got to do inventory so you can figure out, one, what you have. You can put it so that, you're using the oldest stuff the soonest so that you don't lose food, right? A lot of people stack food, but then they have no idea what food they have. They have no idea their meals. Do they have enough put together for complete meals? So you've got to learn how to do that, figure out how you're going to store it on sturdy shelves. A common mistake is when you start storing on shelves and shelving, you need sturdy wood shelves that you've built, or some metal shelves. You can get plastic, so don't necessarily, when somebody's like, don't get plastic, you can get plastic, but you're not going to be able to put anything of weight on it. You're not going to be able to put buckets, 5-gallon buckets on there. You're not even going to be able to put a lot of cans on a plastic shelf, but you could get plastic shelves for stuff like toilet paper and your soaps and your shampoos and your paper products, like your paper plates and spoons and stuff. So that's what we use our, because they're sturdy, they just can't take a lot of weight like canned food will put on it. Okay, so you guys, those are my mistakes for preserving food. But preserving food is super, super important to get food on your shelf that will be shelf stable and last a very long time. That's the goal. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you learned something from it. If you think that I forgot something or a common mistake that you're like, oh, you know what else people be doing, this, put it in the comments below, because I promise you, there's people that are watching this that have no clue, right? They're just learning to preserve food and they're a little scared, because I get DMs all day long. And so they're going to be watching this video. They're going to be watching your guys' comments. And so help them out with the little tips and tricks and mistakes that you made, maybe, to help them out, so that, because they're going to read this. And the whole point of this channel is so that we can help each other be prepared, okay? And food preservation is a huge piece of that, okay? So if you guys haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I drop videos every day at 2 p.m. And I'm also trying to get my watch hours up right now. So if you're bored and you have nothing to do, play a playlist, okay? Just go up to the playlist and play one of them, okay? Make sure you haven't missed a video. I know we have a lot of new subscribers, and I have a lot of older videos that are really, really good, okay? So I will see you guys next time on the next video. Blessings from my bear cave to yours.